Hello, welcome back to Old Saw. I'm JD Adler. Of course, here at Old Saw, as you know, I recite the complete fairy tales of the brothers Grimm, as translated by Jack Zipes. There, Jack says this is the most complete collection of the fairy tales of the brothers Grimm, including has a section towards the end that is just the stories that were never published before. That's how complete the collection is. 242 stories. He also claims this is the truest translation from the older German into the modern English. He published this in 1987. Leave it up to the audience to decide whether he accomplished that or not. Today, where it's going to be, but this is the collection that I'm reading through here at Old Saw. As we go through these stories, Brothers Grimm. Some of these stories will be familiar, some of them will be brand new to you, but even the familiar ones these are probably not the versions of them, the Disneyfied versions of them that you're used to. Prepare yourself for some. This is 1800s Germany when these stories are being collected and written down, finally. So, that's the time period, the mindset behind the narrator. Just keep that in mind. So this week, this episode, we're doing the Three Spinners. This is the story number 14 out of 242. All right, let's see here. The Three Spinners. There once was a lazy maiden who did not want to spin, and no matter what her mother said, she refused to spin. Finally, her mother became so angry and impatient that she beat her, and her daughter began to cry loudly. Just then, the queen happened to be driving by, and when she heard the crying, she ordered the carriage to stop, went into the house, and asked the mother why she was beating her daughter, for her screams could be heard out in the street. The woman was too ashamed to tell the queen that her daughter was lazy, and said, "I can't get her to stop spinning. She does nothing but spin and spin. I'm so poor that I can't provide the flax." "Well," the queen replied, "there's nothing I like to hear more than the sound of spinning. And I'm never happier than I hear the constant humming of wheels. Let me take your daughter with me to my castle. I've got plenty of flax, and she can spin as much as she likes." The mother was delighted to give her consent, and the queen took the maiden with her. After they reached the castle, she led the maiden upstairs to 3 rooms that were filled with the finest flax from floor to ceiling. "Now spin this flax for me," she said, "and if you finish all this, you shall have my oldest son for your husband. It doesn't matter to me that you're poor. You work industriously and you never stop. That in itself is dowry enough." The maiden was deeply frightened, for she could not have spun the flax even if she were to live 300 years and sit there every day from morning till night. Therefore, when she was left alone, she began to weep and sat there for 3 days without lifting a finger. On the 3rd day, the queen came back to the room, and when she saw that nothing had been spun, she was puzzled. But the maiden made up an excuse and said she had been so tremendously upset about leaving her mother's house that she had been unable to begin working. The queen accepted this excuse, but upon leaving she said, Tomorrow you must begin your work for me." When the maiden was again alone, she did not know what to do or where to turn. In her distress, she went over to the window and saw 3 women coming in her direction. The first had a broad, flat foot. The second had such a large lower lip that it hung down over her chin. And the third had an immense thumb. They stopped in front of her window, looked up, and asked the maiden what the matter was. She told them about her predicament, and they offered to help her. There's actually a picture here of this. Nice little illustration of the meeting. "We'll spin your flax for you in no time at all," they said, "but only if you invite us to your wedding and are not ashamed of us. Moreover, you must call us your cousins and let us eat at your table." "With all my heart," she responded. "Just come in and get to work right away." She let the 3 odd women in and cleared a place for them in the first room where they could sit down and begin their spinning. One drew out the thread and began threading the other needle. The other wet the thread, and the third twisted it and struck the table with her finger. Whenever she struck it, a reel of yarn dropped to the ground, and it was always most delicately spun. The maiden concealed the 3 spinners from the queen, and every time the queen came, the maiden showed her such a large amount of spun yarn that there was no end to the queen's praise for her. When the first room was empty of flax, they moved on to the second, and then the third, until it too was cleared of flax. Now the 3 women took their leave and said to the maiden, "Don't forget what you promised us. It will determine your good fortune." When the maiden showed the queen the empty room and the large piles of yarn, the queen arranged for the wedding, and the bridegroom was happy to get such a skillful and industrious wife, and gave her tremendous praise. "I have 3 cousins," said the maiden, "and since they've done so many good things for me, I'd like to remember them in my happiness by inviting them to the wedding. Please allow me to do this and let them sit at our table." The queen and the bridegroom said, "Why, of course we'll allow this." When the feast was just about to begin, the 3 women entered in bizarre costumes, and the bride said, "Welcome, dear cousins." "Ah," said the bridegroom, "how did you ever come by such ghastly-looking friends?" Then he went to the one with the broad, flat foot and asked, "How did you get such a flat foot?" What a dick this guy is. "How did you get such a flat foot?" "From treading," she answered. "From treading." Next, the bridegroom went to the second and asked, "How did you get such a drooping lip?" "From licking," she answered. "From licking." Then he asked the third one, "How did you get such an immense thumb?" "From twisting thread," she answered. "From twisting thread." Upon hearing this, the prince was alarmed and said, "Never ever shall my beautiful wife touch a spinning wheel again." Then she was able to rid herself of the terrible task. Thus she was able to rid herself of the terrible task of spinning flax. And that's the end of the story. There's no more. Sometimes the brothers Grimm will mash what seems like 3 stories together just to keep getting. And this one, some other times like this, that's it. That's the end of the story. And thus she was able to rid herself of the terrible task of spinning flax. That's the only way. Either you're spinning flax or you're married to a king. Those are your options, ladies. Get used to it. That is the moral of the story of the 3 spinners. You're going to be... Oh, the Brothers Grimm, huh? Well, that was a short one. I didn't realize quite how short that one was. But the next one's Hansel and Gretel. That's a bit longer. I'm gonna save that for a separate episode of its own. The Brothers Grimm never disappoint. There's a remarkable lack of violence in that one. I'll say that for them. That story had no violence, no one was getting killed, but just, again, also no name. Like the next story is Hansel and Gretel. Those people have names. That's an unusual thing. Most of the stories like this one, everyone's the husband, the wife, the daughter, the stepdaughter, the big thumbed girl. Like everybody's is labeled, this label. And this is a rather inclusive story with unattractive people. Again, life is capricious. The previous story had a very karmic theme of the person who was good to the gnomes got blessings, and the person who was selfish and wouldn't be nice to, and refused to be nice to them, rude to the gnomes, got curses. But this story goes back to the more traditional theme that we see with the Brothers Grimm of the life is capricious and random, and you just roll with it. That's all you can do. Brothers Grimm. That was the story of the three spinners who helped the girl avoid work. And that's just how it ends. She got out of work. Good for her. That's I guess it's a relevant story, right? Either you're going to be working your ass off till you're dead and letting other people take the credit, or you're getting married to some rich guy, some trust fund baby who's going to get you out of the cycle. Hansel and Gretel, the three spinners. I'm JD Adler. This has been Old Saul. Next time, we're doing Hansel and Gretel.